Hi everyone, it's Karen here. Welcome to another video with me. And today I'm going to share with you how I created this super bright, sunny, cheerful card using 3 colours in Distress Oxides. I've got mustard seed, peacock feathers and chipped sapphire. Distress inks will work just as well. I'm using a stencil in the background. The one that I've chosen is called Glory. Several of the other stencils from Lavinia will work just as well. The foliage that I'm using here is the Fairy Thistle, that's the group here, and then the single Fairy Thistle. And then the sentiment that I'm using is something called Embrace Your Dreams. It's 4 lines, but I just wanted those 3 words, so I've cut them out and mounted them onto the top of the card. The size of card that I'm using here is 9.5 centimetres by 14.5 centimetres. I'm using white Lavinia multifarious cardstock. We'll get started. So I'm going to start with my mustard seed. I'm going to use a blending sponge, a piece of copy paper to protect my work, and I'm going to make sure that my sponge is well inked. These are clean sponges. I've just put them through the washer, so I will have to make sure that I've got a lot of ink on the sponge. Yes, I do indeed put my sponges through the washer. I put them in one of those net bags. I wait till I've got a group of them. I put them in the net bag, I put it on a quick wash, and I just dry them in the kitchen on a tea towel. Hey presto, all done. So you can see what I'm doing here is just moving this sponge in a circular motion, starting off the edge of the card and coming in a little bit. Lots of ink on my sponge so I don't get any scratch marks. Keeping it moving, keeping it circular motion. And I'm just going to create a sort of upside down L, if you like. A bit of a lazy upside down L. I want to make sure that I got a decent amount of yellow on this card because that's what give it the brightness. Now you can see what I meant about the upside down L. So I'll put that mustard seed to one side and I'll pick up peacock feathers with my other blending sponge. And then I'm going to come in from the side, again keeping it moving in a circular motion, just up to the yellow. Keeping it moving, and lots of ink on my sponge. Then I'm going to pick back up my mustard seed, back up that sponge, and I'm going to go over where the 2 join. And I'm pressing quite hard here so that I get a blend of the colours. And you can see where the yellow meets the peacock feathers, you're now getting a more of a greeny tone. Voila. And now I've got my chipped sapphire, and I'm just going to put a tiny bit of this on the corner. And then I'm going to go back with my peacock feathers and blend over that mark join so that they sort of look together. It doesn't have to be perfect because you see we're going to smudge it with water in a second. So that's our blending done. How easy is that, hey? Then I'm going to take my stencil and my spritzy bottle of water And I'm just going to put a bit of water along the front of the stencil. Take my stencil and just tap it a couple of times so that the stencil's not sopping with water. Move that out of the way. And then I'm going to turn my stencil water side down onto my card. And using a piece of kitchen towel, but I don't have any kitchen towel because I ran out, I'm just going to use one of my cloths. I'm just going to press down so that the water is now trapped between the stencil and the card. Lifting it up, and you get this lovely imprint of the stencil. Now I'm going to dry that off and I'll come back to you. So now that that's dry, I'm going to take my single fairy thistle. I'm going to ink it up with VersaFine Clair Nocturne. I just love this ink. It's really brilliant for these detail stamps. Give me a crisp, clear image every single time. And then I'm going to just pop this in the center of the card. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a second image of it. I'm going to clean it off just with my cloth. And then look at this. The beauty of these stamps, these particular ones, is that you can bend the stem because it's really flexible. You can bend the stem ever so gently and have a different looking stamp. So you can bend it left or right. Tap, tap, tap. Put some more ink on. And then I'm just going to pop this next to the other one. Voila. Then I'm going to take my fairy thistle group. And again, inking that up with my Nocturne. And I'm going to set this at an angle. So I'm going to pop it just about there. Voila! Now, while I've got my black ink out, I'm going to ink up my sentiment. Now, even though I only want those 3 words, I'm actually going to stamp the whole sentiment, because what I've found is sometimes when I'm stamping, if I just wanted those 3 words, I'm so focused on those 3 words that I press so hard down and I smudge it. Whereas if I'm doing the whole image, I evenly press the whole thing and the entire sentiment comes out really crisp. So that's my sentiment. I'm now just going to cut out the 3 words that I wanted. Okay, so I've cut out my sentiment. I'm going to pop my liquid pearls. These are tiny little dots, just for a bit of extra decoration on the card. So liquid pearls, white opal, absolute my favourite of all time. I always start by taking a tiny bit off to the side, because then I know how much pressure to apply for the various dots that I want. And I'm just going to pop a few of these dots here and there around these fairy thistles. Depending on how much pressure you apply, will be how big your blobs are. So you can actually get some really minute little dots if you just barely touch the paper. So we're going to put a few here at the top of this fairy thistle. There is no specific plan here. I'm sure you're guessing that. maybe a couple on this dark blue because they show up really well there. Okay, I think I'm done now for now. Now, to mount my little piece of sentiment, before I do that, I'm going to use chipped sapphire and just create a border. Probably don't want to do that over my card. Just create a border around there. That's giving me a little frame. Just gives it a bit of extra something. Now to the back, I've just applied a bit of double-sided tape. I actually prefer using these mounting pads. That way, let me show you, that way they come individually like this, and I can just cut them to the size that I want. I prefer using that to tape. That's just a personal preference. There's no real reason why. And then I'm just going to pop this over there. Should we put it straight? And finally, I'm going to go in with my Glossy Accents. Glossy Accents is a clear dimensional medium, and it just adds a bit of extra shine, dimension to things like wings, flowers. You don't want to shake it because otherwise it gets bubbles. However, if you do get some bubbles, you just get a pin, prick the bubbles, it'll deflate. So this dimensional medium finds its own level. You can see I'm just using the fine nib to paint around the shape and then colour it in. And then, as I say, it just finds its level and it dries perfectly clear. It does take a while to dry, which is why it's the last thing that I've done. I've put on all my little dots, I've put on my sentiment, and the last thing that I'm going to do is this Glossy Accents, and then I can just leave it to dry. So I'm just doing 3 of these of the bunch of fairy thistles and then the 2 single ones, leaving the back 2 or the back few undimensionaled, if you like. I don't even know if that's a verb, but there you are. So that just creates some extra depth, dimension to your piece. Now, if I show it to you, I hope you can see the glossiness of it, the shine. So, what I did with my original is I just mounted it with a piece of black card behind it. I gave it 3 or 4 millimeters each edge. So, something bright, something quick. I would love to see what you make, and I'll be back soon. Bye for now.